I think that there's a couple of misconceptions that business owners and accountants have when it comes to sales tax audits. I think the biggest one is the assumption that if you're being audited, you did something wrong. Look, audits can happen for any reason or no reason at all. And in fact, most commonly, they're just random, routine, periodic audits within your home state. So if you've been audited, don't assume that your sales tax service provider or your bookkeeper or your software has done anything to trigger it. That being said, there are some like really obvious ways that sales tax audits can be triggered, like, for example, not filing your sales tax returns on time or having a disproportionate amount of exempt orders. There's other things there, but I wouldn't be looking for a reason or some sort of finger to point as to who's causing the audit or what's causing the audit. I think another misconception is if we have everything taken care of, if everything's good to go in terms of our sales tax, then this should be easy. And unfortunately, sales tax audits are not easy. Like, we can say that with quite a bit of experience. In the best circumstances, we're still talking about a multi-month process. There's no world where a sales tax audit starts and finishes in a few days or like even a few weeks. Auditors are super slow, especially now because states are just increasing the expectations for how large an auditor's caseload is. On that note, we are seeing sales tax audits skyrocket. And I'm not just saying that to be inflammatory. We have been tracking what percent of our clients are under audit ever since I started the company, and it's always averaged about 1%. That has increased to about 4% of our clients. And when I talked with other sales tax firm owners, they're seeing the same exact thing. Audits are just generally increasing in the post-COVID environment because of all of the state budget shortfalls. I just saw an article come through this week from New Jersey where their overall tax collection revenues are down about 10% from what they expected. What do you think that means? I mean, they can't just magically create tax dollars, but they can ramp up the enforcement of their existing laws, right? Hate to see it. Hate to see it. So we've got a guide that I'm going to link in the description here that talks about sneaky ways that sales tax auditors can find you. We call it our sneaky tricks guide. And I actually don't want to talk about that today because you can review that guide. It's super helpful. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But I want to talk about some other sneaky things that sales tax auditors do that most people are not aware of. And they are borderline unethical. Like, I certainly, if I was a politician, I would think they're unethical. They are unethical. I'm just going to say that. So the first thing is sales tax auditors will ask you for information that legally you do not have to provide them, but they make it seem like you have to do it and you have to comply. You legally have to comply with everything that they ask for, that they're legally like obligated to look into, but that's not everything. It's kind of like if you get pulled over and the cop's like, "Can I search your vehicle?" You would say, "Do you have probable cause? Why are you searching my vehicle?" Probably no, unless there's like a legal justification for it. Same thing with an audit. If we have a sales tax auditor coming and they're asking for income tax statements and gross receipts and access to your accounting ledger in your balance sheet and all of these things, you really need to figure out, do they have legal authority to look at this information? And if they don't, why are you providing them with anything that they can use to hang you with? We ran into this situation like last month where a client was asked by an auditor, "Hey, will you just show us everything in your bookkeeping system?" And they said, "Sure." And they didn't ask us. And no, we actually saw that email. We said, "Don't do that. Do not do that. Like, we need to have a conversation." They gave access. They ended up finding something that led to another thing that led to another thing that created a $30,000 problem for them. That had nothing to do with sales tax, but it was triggered by a sales tax audit. So, moral of the story is, make sure that if you're providing information, you are legally required to provide it. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut. You don't need to give them anything. And If you do not have that internal expertise, this is where partnering with someone like TaxValet, where this is the only thing that we do all day, every day, can be really, really helpful. I think the other super sneaky thing that they do is the states will hire and contract with third-party companies. These are private for-profit companies that the government says, hey, go and like audit these people and we will give you a percentage of whatever you find. So if you find $100,000, you can keep like 15K of it. The incentives are just totally wacky here, right? Because like they're incentivized to really push the envelope. But what many businesses don't realize is that if you're contacted by one of these third-party firms and they say, "Oh, we're government contractors, and you have to comply," not always, because if you actually look at how the law is written, you are only obligated to provide information to actual government employees. And so sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes if you're being contacted by someone who is not the government themselves, you can just ignore them. What are they going to do? They don't have all of the special privileges that the government has when it comes to creating assessments and drafting funds from your bank account or creating liens. It is really just sort of like a scare tactic. And the third trick that we see is that auditors will stay quiet, be super slow, unresponsive, and then they'll have a deadline by which they say they need to have everything done. Right. And even though they've been dragging their feet and you've been trying to be proactive, they'll get right to that day and say, well, I don't have everything and we're, at the cutoff date. So I'm just going to create an assessment and you're just going to have to pay this amount. Excuse me? Like we've been doing everything that we were supposed to do in order to keep this audit moving, but you, the auditor, are slow and now we're going to pay for that. Anyways, there's a whole appeal process and a whole bunch of things that you can do in order to address this, but nonetheless, it's pretty scummy. So these are some of the sneaky things that auditors can and will do once when they've actually opened the audit. Now, if you're looking for sneaky tricks auditors use to find you to start that audit, you should check out our Sneaky Tricks guide. I'll put the link in the description. In terms of the top states for sales tax audits, pretty consistently, we are seeing it's California, Illinois, Wisconsin, Washington, and your home state. So wherever you are home based out of, and that is, where your office address is, that's where you're going to see audits happen the most likely. Why? Well, because you're almost certainly going to have a permit in that state for resale certificates or other reasons, and because you have Nexus there, and they just audit their home states more likely, it looks like. So if you're sick and tired of dealing with sales tax, you don't want to deal with an audit, you've had an audit, you know the nightmare situation it can be, and you just like a team of experts to take care of it all for you, my team would love to have a conversation with you. Our website is thetaxvalet.com. We've got some great resources, articles, blogs that you can check out that are totally free for you. And if you want someone to just take the wheel, we'd be happy to do it. So hope to hear from you.